Hello, lovely people. Welcome to the In Kindness We Rise podcast, the podcast where we show the world that kindness is indeed still all around. My name is Patricia Lübeck. I'm a nurturer, a healer, and a protector, and I'm so delighted to present this first episode to you. Today, I'm talking to Caffyn Jesse. Caffyn is a Certified Somatic Sex Educator with a master's degree in Educational Studies and an Associate in Sex Education certificate from the Institute for Advanced Studies in Human Sexuality. Caffyn teaches Sexological Bodywork and Somatic Sex Education, as well as Intimacy Educator training. She has a base in Canada, but she's also branching out and teaching around the world. Besides being a fabulous author and having created a wealth of knowledge for future generations to avail of, Caffyn is one of those special humans that simply by being in her presence, you feel like you want to become a better human too. Today we talk about a variety of things, including the joy of kink and pleasure, and the depth of beauty that is available to us both in deep grief and ecstatic joy. Please welcome with me, Caffyn Jesse.
Can you feel it? We are coming into our hearts. Can you feel it? Our new world finally starts. Now is the time. Now is the time. In kindness we rise. Now is the time. In love we rise. In kindness and love we rise. In kindness and love we rise.
Yeah, welcome, Caffyn. I'm so happy for you to be here in the Kindness We Rise podcast, where we talk about all of the beautiful ways that we can indeed find that kindness is all around. I was very, very pleased and lucky to do the Intimacy Educator training with Caffyn last year in Belfast. So today I'm just really happy to welcome you, Caffyn, and if you would like to share a little bit about where you are in your practice, in your life right now, to give us a meeting point, that'd be great.
Well, I feel very honored and pleased to be part of this kindness broadcast and yeah, to have a chance to reconnect with you and have a cup of tea together. Thank you so much. And the magic of our technology. Here I am at my home on Salt Spring Island in Canada, and I'm isolated because of this COVID-19 virus. And where I am is being in the invitation of the aloneness to really explore my usually like jam-packed busy life suddenly has opened up this generous space of just like being with my own soul and in like engaged with the world in spacious conversations like this online. So that's it feels different and special.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I'm sure it is a very different lifestyle for you as it is for me. I'm used to touching people a lot and caring for people physically and being very close to people. So to be separate has asked me to work very differently. Would you like to talk about that a little bit?
Yes, I mean, it's so different for, although I've done a lot of online teaching and I do know the power of it. One of the ways that I've worked with people a lot when I worked one-on-one, and also like I teach classes online. Is to like in my one-on-one work, I would often use a retreat format. So I would work for a time for people in the online environment, and then they'd come to me for embodied like retreat. for a week and then go off, and then we'd keep in touch online with online sessions, and then come back, maybe once a year over several years. And it's a way that I've loved working with people for different reasons. That it's a way like we can each be in the safety and enoughness of our own home space, and yet then connect and learn that pendulation between feeling myself, my own body, and then feeling connection. And so often like in an immediate connection, we'll have a habit of either collapsing ourselves or pushing in to connection that doesn't let us feel ourselves and then feel the other. Whereas, there's something in the online space where we can explore that and build that capacity, so that when we come together in person, that we've actually we've got some groundwork there. So I felt the power of that. In recent years, I've been doing a lot of workshops and feeling busy with having this place full of people from all over the world that are touching each other and getting up, learning intimacy and touch and eros in a really embodied way. So the vaporizing of all that, this space right now where our way to be intimate and caring and loving has to be by being in this online space. I feel like I have a hint of how that works, and then it's asking, how can we step this up to another level? What about you, Patricia? Tell me about what you're finding and learning and knowing.
Oh, so much of what you say really resonates. I have done things online, and I've taught Reiki online in the past even. And it's really interesting because I felt very little like offering things, because it just doesn't feel so fulfilling to me to be online, because I enjoy, a lot of the modalities I offer are really, really deep trauma modalities, and people would go very freely in their expression. And there's a part of me hesitant to invite people to go that deep without being by their side and being able to hug them and to give that reassurance. So it's been a bit more difficult for me to feel brave enough to really put it out. But at the same time, it has really forced me to put out what is truly me and not someone else. So I've got lots of things I'm recording and working on that I would have never put out if it wasn't for the flood of people doing EFT and trauma work and yoga already online. So by kind of feeling like there wasn't space enough, I then had to figure out, well, what am I doing new? And so it's been really challenging and quite lonely in a way and withdrawn in a way. So this is kind of my 4th week starting, so it's been a while. But at the same time, it's also been really like a juicy journey of knowing myself and finding out who I really am more.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, that really resonates for me too. Yeah.
Are there any nuggets of wisdom or any processes that have really helped you in this self-inquiry?
Well, a process of like a quieting of life and like feeling the hush falling over the world, like feeling appreciation too of like this whole global system of capitalism that seemed like irrevocable and unstoppable just has crashed to a stop in a way, like for the sake of protecting vulnerable elders. And like to feel the like kind of the love in that and the beauty in that, like in an embodied way, has really helped me. And part of what it's helped me to be to feel is to feel like the panicky feelings, the fear that I feel and that so many people feel about like the loss of livelihood, the loss of how I know how to do activism, how I know how to do to bring my medicine to the world, how I know how to make a living, and then like the fear of the virus itself, to feel that panic vibrate me into a deeper thing, that it isn't just like fear for myself, it's like a terror for the world, like the losses of like the reason why this virus materialized is because of the losses of the last wild spaces, and the truth of the losses that have already happened and that are happening and that will happen, and like the terror that maybe we're going to lose all the web of life and death, like not just my personal fear, but this transpersonal terror. And to really feel that as part of like the deepening into like the quietness of just like stop doing, like there's no way to fix this but to stop being so busy and to stop doing, and like this is how I have to show my love, and this is how I have to like be in the truth of this.
Yeah, not fixing, just pausing with it, being with it. That's such a powerful thought, and it's something I'm actually really familiar with through your work. I remember you put it so delicately when we were learning about how to facilitate intimacy and erotic expression with others in this beautiful power with dynamic where no one is better than the other. The big takeaway I got from that was that rather than classifying things as good, as bad, as right, or as wrong, seeing ourselves in this constant web of creative expression and creative ways to meet ourselves and our needs.
Well, it is like part of my learning and my teaching that I think is so key, is that process of blending. So rather than coming in with an answer, so we could demo that by doing the fist thing for anyone watching, of just like to make a fist and like feel yourself like in that fist, in the tightness of the fist, and like hold it clenched and hold it like fierce, this contraction, and then come in with your other hand and try and tell that fist like being a fist is not good. Like you should be an open hand, and like try and just like unpeel those fingers and like get open, like open up, like what's wrong with you being all contracted? Like why are you being a fist? Like get over yourself and just feel what happens in that fist. And then like take a breath and like take that in, and then like feel your fist and feel the fierceness of your fist. And then come in with your hand, shake off that old fixing energy, and like come in with a different kind of energy, and just like hold your fist and like feel like how awesome it is, the strength and power of this fist. Like how brilliant that you figured out like how to be so strong, how to be so contracted, how to like punch your way through things. Like thank you for being a fist. Thank you for all the protection you've offered, and like what an amazing fist you are. And then just feel what's happening in your fist hand. What do you notice with that?
I love doing this exercise And it immediately makes me think of all the ways that I deem myself wrong. And, just approaching myself with understanding and care, it just makes me want to enter into like a dance of my hands. And there's just such an expansion and a freedom that I feel from that. It's such a beautiful remembering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I have to keep remembering, like, for myself, like, it's something like we can learn to do for ourselves to some extent. And then, like, when we reach the limit of our capacity, we need to find that kind of holding with each other, right? To take our places where we're feeling like we can't give ourselves like that acceptance and appreciation to others who can, who have that capacity to like hold us and like not have the answers for us, but just see how our, whatever it is that we're feeling like the shame about or the blame about, to hold it and like thank it and like see it as part of our superpower and give it that blending through which it can begin to like become something else, that dance of like partnership, because that's like, yeah, that's like the only way really through somatically, right? Like you can have all the good ideas of like you should be an open hand but it's not going to happen without that. I mean, there can be, right? Like there can be like the lightning that breaks and bullies and opens you and shatters you and forces you to yield, like your break that fist. And if it doesn't kill you, sometimes like that trauma can be like a journey of becoming, of like offering our magic to the world.
This virus is doing that. It's not a new pattern. We've been on a journey of unity probably since the Second World War, and after realizing what we really don't want in this world. And so now we're continuing that journey, but it happened overnight that we suddenly start to do things for each other and to put ourselves into the confinement of our home for each other. And it's not just here, but it's around the world. And we're seeing these waves crashing over different parts of the world, embracing ourselves while also holding the light for those parts. And it's very little separated. I'm sure there's always someone who finds a way to separate it in this human world. But there are so many people who are suddenly really, really confronting their unity with each other.
Yeah.
One thing that came to my mind as you were speaking was as part of our training, we also talked about, guidelines for our practices. And I hope I'm getting this right, correct me if I'm wrong, but you made a real point to have as little harsh no's as possible, because on the one hand, they kind of encourage that rebellious side of us to find that especially appealing, but also from a perspective of people making mistakes, and it's not really serving us as a society to step into judgment and devaluing people because of what they have done. I think that's coming into my mind more and more often as I notice my own anger towards humans and myself and others.
Yeah. Well, I think like if we can co-create an environment where mistakes and messiness can be part of learning, that we don't have that immediate like you mistake, you're out, but that we can like feel our no and stay in connection and cultivate like a place where it's like, thank you for your no. And like, this is how attunement can happen, and this is how transformative justice can happen, and this is how like places can learn. If it's all about like guarding and protecting like the good guys from the bad guys, then it's just about staying the same. But if we can create like capacity for mistakes and messiness and learning, then we can keep growing better in the blend. So sometimes that's just not possible, right? Like a thing is, it like it's like the medicine becomes the poison, or the poison becomes the medicine, and finding that place of like where there can be like not too hot and not too cold, but just right.
Yeah, would you like to muse about the difference between judgment and accountability and how we can bring that into our lives? Not necessarily as a definite answer, but just things that have worked for you in your experiences, your wisdom.
Mm-hmm. I think like, you know, our reactive energies, like when we feel danger and get stirred, we have our awesome immediate energies that get mobilized by the nervous system, the fight, flight, freeze, appease, and dissociate. And so we feel those energies, and they are so important and powerful. And they're not about communication and connection and intimacy and getting better in the blend. They're about protecting by disconnecting somehow. Yeah, whether it's through fight of like, you're wrong, I'm right. Whether it's through flight of get me out of here, appease, like collapsing ourselves so that we can mitigate the danger by being nice and making nice, or dissociating, like I can't make this different, and so I have to like distract myself or get out of myself or get away from myself by staying here but not being fully present. So these are all ways that we manage danger through disconnection, and they're wonderful, important ways. But that'll be like the first responder to danger. And we can get stuck in those, like not knowing that they're like, when it's safe enough to be brave, that we can actually go through these immediate first responses to a more powerful response that's about feeling the first response, but with resource to stay in connection. So we can feel like our anger, our fight response. And, you know, if it's safe enough to go through the portal of our first response into a more empowered and connective response, then we can find in that anger a capacity for like, I feel my integrity is disturbed by this. I feel your integrity is disturbed by this. How can we call this situation into something different? That how can we find our vision in the blend of us in a better way? Or we can feel like our appease response, not as a collapse and make nice and accommodate and get through this, but as like a call to love, like how can I bring my gifts and resources and call you to your gifts and resources, and like co-create something that's more beautiful, more intimate. So yeah, that's kind of like my book, Elements of Intimacy, which is available as a free download for anyone that's interested on my website. Yeah, that's what I talk about in that. Yeah, so you were talking about like the difference between like judgment and, was it discernment, or
accountability even.
Accountability, yeah. So that like call to like centered accountability, like the difference between judgment and discernment, the difference between like shame and accountability, like, you know, like staying in connection with like feeling bad and wrong, but not like I'm bad and wrong, but I've done something bad and wrong, and I can be accountable like I want to be. And yeah, so like it's just like are we safe enough with this person or in this community or with this process that we can figure out to not need those emergency first responders, but to go to our bigger, more spacious place that's about weaving connection.
How do we do that in a world that seems unsafe? So right now, I feel like there is such a shadow of confusion and withholding. You know, obviously, not all the information shared is honest, and without feeding into any storyline too strongly, we can clearly see that not everything is exactly as it seems. So how can we be in this world that objectively kind of doesn't tick the boxes for what we would be seeking in a trusting confidant? But also, I don't want to stay in my trauma response no matter what happens in this world, because if I stay in that trauma forever, then I won't actually contribute to the next generations. You know, my life is so committed to the 7 generations ahead and my children's children, and how can I leave this world better? So it seems like in this moment, no matter what I will choose, there will be a sense of risk or a sense of danger or a sense of uncertainty. And it also seems like the choices that I have aren't ideal. None of the choices I currently have are ideal, but I still have to make choices, or I would like to make choices. What's a little bit of hope for that?
Well, to me, the hope and the knowing is like it's part of our embodied wisdom that we carry forward, like in our DNA. We have like in our cells, there's these mitochondria that carry the DNA from the mother line, like from the original human mother, which, you know, carries the DNA from the like original cell. And yeah, this information there that comes through this straight unbroken line, like there's part of it, like 90% of it, that is like just like it knows how to do this, like it carries all the information about like how to make energy in a way that's like incredibly sustainable in partnership with chlorophyll. It like can sustain and like infinite sort of energy for interconnection with this kind of quiet knowing. And then it's got like the 10% of the DNA, and that DNA like is so stable, but this 10% of it is like so unstable and open to mutation and like completely doesn't know what to do, and like it's weak and impossible, and like it's sort of like the non-functional part of the DNA. It really doesn't know what to do next. So, and it's the DNA that's like always open to like what's next, what's more, like what's too much, what's not enough. And that, to me, it reminded me of a New Chalnith story. The New Chalnith people here on the West Coast offer this story through a museum display in Ucluelet or Long Beach Park, of the hunting of the whale. There, people hunted the whale, and so 8 men would go off in a canoe to hunt the whale, and they had to prepare by like being fierce and being bonded and being brave, incredibly courageous, like cultivating their bravery, their capacity to risk their life for their people, and like knowing that they were going to feel all those responses, like the first responses, and like calling them up into the more spacious responses of being able to act really effectively in connection with each other and with the whale and with whatever was happening in the moment. And that sometimes they wouldn't be able to, and that the fierceness of those first responses could also be mobilized. But then meanwhile, the wife of the head hunter was to stay home and prepare for, like, the most important part of the hunt was her just staying home, completely finding within herself a stillness so profound that the whale would want to come and be her lover. And that, to me, is like what this situation is asking of us, is to find like that stillness of what we know, what we value, and also to find, like, as part of our integrity, this part of us that's like breaks, it's broken, it's like open, it's weak, it just doesn't know. And that it's all part of the integrity, and that we have that knowing, like that this broken, weak part of us is the brave part, it's the unsafe part, it's the scared shitless part, and that it's all part of our integrity.
Yeah. Oh, I recognize that part that doesn't know, that feels scared. Especially coming from German heritage. I grew up about half an hour from one of the concentration camps that brought people to Auschwitz. And I've spent a lot of hours in these last weeks remembering those times in my cells. And that part in me is really activated, you know, of what used to happen to my people, and that kind of helplessness and deception and confusion, and like a knowing but not having enough information to put it together. Mm-hmm. And so I've had some really, really hard days sitting with those ancestral memories, but also, you know, coming back to this kindness. One of the pivotal things I do when I go into past lives is asking for the purpose of this showing and this knowing. And I kept seeing, you know, myself in connection with others, being in chambers, losing our lives, but being so in love with each other that there was a sense of calm and love and expansion, mm-hmm. even in those moments that from the outside seemed so utterly horrible, just, you know, terrible. Not that I didn't feel this terror. In fact, I'm surprised my nervous system could feel so much terror at once. But there was just this real sense of beauty that went to a knowing beyond death, and that remembered the value of staying present staying present and loving even when things seem doomed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, it's that idea that you write so beautifully about in the Elements of Intimacy of the beauty way, which is a concept that's really close to me because a lot of my shamanic teaching unlocked through working with Navajo practitioners and indigenous people around the world, but especially Navajo practitioners. Would you like to speak about the beauty way a little bit in this contrast?
Yeah, well, you've spoken of it so well, but and so movingly. I'm feeling, like in the, that like, is there a space of choice that we can fully with the terror and certainty of ending, be with the enormity of our grief and the truth of our relief and the the beauty way is a deepening into joy, and why so often it needs to be learned and taught and chosen many times a day, is that it's also like a deepening into grief and into it's not it's about the truth of love and loving connection. And so it's not just turning your back to the depth of loss, right? It's really being able to choose that.
When I met one of my current sort of teachers and guides about this grief that I was feeling, her response was that the tears and the crying and, you know, like that snotty, ugly, horrible crying that humans are capable of, in that moment of going, like, that breath is the inspiration for why we incarnate and why we go through this life and why we brave this crazy 3D existence and why we feed all of this knee-deep experience up, right? And down and back and forth and everywhere. And it's something I find really hard to see most of days at the moment, because my nervous system is very willing to play the "it's an unsafe world" cycle into people are dying and they're suffering and how horrible. And as you say, it's like a practice to be joyful sometimes, and to be joyful while others may not be. That's why the story you shared is so touching to me, because I feel it gives me permission to dance with joy even for 10 minutes, and to laugh at the cat, and to be not too serious, but to actually also really expand into that inspiration, even though there is so much pain in the world right now.
Mm-hmm. And that pain is not the opposite of joy. To me, the opposite of joy is shutting down into the reactive energies, the meanness and demeaning energies of a diminishment of joy and pain. And that sometimes that's necessary and certainly possible, and of lots of life is played out on that level, life and death. Yeah, but that joy is that bigger space of where pain is also enormous.
Yeah, and in pleasure practices, sometimes pain and pleasure are so interlinked. Can you talk a little bit about that? Your experiences, or maybe something for you that you've learned through working with this dance?
Well, let's see what I can think to say about that. Well, often in the experience of like danger and trauma and unsafety and like losing our dignity for the sake of belonging, or losing our belonging for the sake of our dignity, we know and we learn to like shut down both our pleasure and our pain. And we create relationship from that level, like basically relationship as threat management, that we don't want to experience that overwhelming pain, and so we don't risk reaching for our pleasure, and we lose in that place of diminishment. And so like as a intimacy educator, well, as a student of these practices, I was coming from a place of early life and trauma around my sexuality and sexual identity. And in the first places I found where I felt like safe enough to feel into my being at a deeper level, there were just like endless tears. It was just like there was never going to be an end to that like snotty sobbing, like completely out of control grieving for all that I hadn't experienced ever before, that safe enough touch, that like being encouraged to feel into my own longing and like be met with like someone who could stay present and not want me to be something I wasn't, or blame me for being who I was or feeling my desires. So yeah, I certainly experienced that in my own early days of receiving a lot of touch-based healing. You know, offering that then to others, I certainly, you know, experienced a lot of people, yeah, just finding the profound grief that like liberates or is liberated by, or it grows together with our capacity to live a life of joy, to choose joy. So that's one level. Like another level is, you know, being kinky, and like there's the neurological truth of like our bliss chemistry and our pain chemistry are like intricately generative, like, and just like when we can be in safe enough places to be brave enough to receive bold sensation and to offer it, and to feel ourselves in the powerful energies of like roles and touch that is bold and big, then, you know, for people that works for, then there's like an actual like neurochemical capacity within us to like generate bliss from that bold experience, so that pain and pleasure build together. And that's that can be like for those that are drawn to that exploration and can feel, you know, that feel resourced in it. It's just like it feels empowering and delicious to explore.
Yeah, delicious. It's such a great word, isn't it? Delicious.
Yeah, delicious word.
Yeah, and maybe we could finish this portion of our conversation with like, I would love to make an appeal for people to be brave enough to feel yummy if it's authentic in their process, even though others might not right now. Mm-hmm. So maybe would you like to share a kind experience that you've had in your life with someone where kindness made you feel yummy, or just like an everyday thing or a raunchy thing for that matter? Anything that just makes you feel really yummy somatically, so that everyone can't help but want that too in their own ways.
Well, I find like so much makes me feel so yummy if I like notice and attend and give energy to the yummy sensations, like just like sitting here connected with you, this most beautiful soul that I met, like that's halfway around the world, and like seeing your beauty and feeling your kindness and feeling like the connection of like old and young and like here and there and like past and future, like that's flowing through us. Like I'm seeing the light in your room, and I'm seeing like the body that I've been hugged by, and I'm feeling myself like nourished by my breakfast, and I'm feeling like my little dog right beside me, and I'm feeling like just like the safe enough, like right here, to feel brave enough to connect with you, and then like the feeling that this conversation might connect with others, and like I feel the delight of like the internet like wrapping our globe and connecting us and making like these connections possible. It's like a sparkling, like, yeah, I feel that an embodied like awareness of it sparkle in my being, and then I look up with saying that, and I saw like sparkles on the water and in the trees here, like it was like an answering sparkle in the natural world that I'm actually feeling in my physiology. So just by attending all that, I'm like fostering the delight, the delight of like an open hearted feeling of loving and being loved, and I'm just like giving that my delight room to be. And then like the other energy is the despite energy, right? Like the feeling that you know, I have my delightometer and my despitometer. We could make that available to your listeners if you want. But like to find ourselves like coming into our dignity and enoughness in the sense of like, where do we find our despite like energy, where we're not feeling like the kind of death, despair energy of like overwhelm, and we're not feeling the like sense that we that spite sense of like meanness of like you're wrong and I'm right, sort of, but to feel like that call to our power and dignity of like what, how here, and that's going to be different for everyone, like our, in all our different circumstances, and all like in isolation, that like what can I do despite these circumstances that like both you and I are in the swirl of like livelihood and being threatened and like all we know what to do being like not possible to do anymore, and all the, you know, glee that the fascists must feel that like activism is impossible and like as we know it, and that social control is instituted, and like just like despite all that, like to find our place today in this moment of like okay, here in this breath, in this action that I can choose right now, I can feel my power and dignity.
Oh my word. Yeah, that's a yummy sentiment if I know one. What beautiful words to finish this on. I'm really grateful. Thank you for showing up, and I've been spending the last few days kind of like a giddy child, just thinking about all the things that I would like to ask you. And I'm sure when I lie in Shavasana next time, I think of all the things I could have said instead and asked instead. Wonderful. Thank you so much for listening. We had a lot of joy and fun creating this podcast for you. And if you're curious about Caffyn's training, her work, and also the free resources that she provides, you can find most of that on her website, www.aerospirit.ca. If you would like to stay updated and receive the following podcasts and episodes, then you can be in touch with me via my website, www.patricialubeck.com, or you can email me directly with your questions and your feedback at contact@patricialubeck.com. Join us for more kindness soon. In kindness we rise.
Can you feel it? We are coming into our hearts.